Good morning. It is October 23rd. I am up off of the hairpin overlook and it's time to start a bow drill. Well, why would you want to start a bow drill? One, because it's fun. Two, because maybe you don't have anything else. Maybe you don't have a lighter in your pocket, which we could just use right now. Maybe you don't have a metal match. Maybe you just want to practice these skills for a just in case thing. So, I'm going to show you a few different types of woods that you could use, as well as we'll go through the techniques and lighting up a bow drill from start to finish. So, let's do it. Well, we went back in the woods just a little ways, and we're just looking for bow drill material. So, we have this little Junglas fir right here. Looks pretty good. Not too many knots on it. If there are a bunch of knots like there is, they're pretty small, so it will make it less difficult to split up. But first, this one looks dead, but we would need to make sure that it's all the way dead. Cut into it, get down past the bark, get to the cambium layer, and just look at the inside. Does it look dry? Well, it does. Now look at it, feel it. You can touch your lips to it to see if it's still dry. You'll also notice that the bark separates from the inside of the wood. The inside of the wood, right in between that layer, is the cambium layer. You can see on here it's the brown layer. You want to make sure that isn't wet. That gives you a clear indication that if it is wet, the tree is still growing. You can stick your tip in there and try and pry out and see if it makes a sharp crack. But sometimes that's not the best indicator, because sometimes when it's green it still does that. But really look at the cambium layer, feel it. This one looks dead. And this could be a good type of spindle wood. We could definitely use that. Usually try and just push it over, which we can do. Push it right over. Pull it out of the ground. That's a good wood. This whole tree could be used for the bow drill. Now, something that you can do is you can give it the old fingernail test. If your fingernail can make a dent in this wood, it just gives a good indication that the wood should be soft enough to make it pretty easy or easier to light this up. Gives you some good parameters to go off of. Now, if you can't make a dent in the wood, it's going to be a real hard wood, so it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. You might need to change some things up. When it's softer, it just makes things easy for you in trying to light the bow drill. This right here might be a pitch stump. A lot of times with these old Junglas firs, the inside of it should be some pitch. Feels real solid. There's a little bit of pitch inside here. You can see it in this spot. That'll be a good bearing block on top. Looks like we got this part. It's pretty solid. A little bit, not too saturated. What you do from here, cut out a piece that just makes it nice and comfortable, has a bearing block. Now, getting a bow is pretty easy when you have a bunch of brush around. This piece of ocean spray right here, it's a live ocean spray, pretty flexible, but still a stout wood. It's still pretty dense. So with the year, this should be a pretty easy wood to use. It's one of my more preferred woods to use for a bow. And chop through it. You want it right about an arm to armpit length, from your armpit to the tip of your finger as a general rule. And then from there, get some of these branches off. And it's just convenient when there's a little crook on the end, you can just tie a fixed loop right on the end here. And then very easy to attach it and then tie it off down to the bottom. So knock that off. And then you have your fixed loop attachment point. This stuff will be the outside of the nest. As I get a whole bunch of it, I'll fold it around a finer material, like the speckled horse's hair, that is a lot finer and lights up a lot more readily. So we have our materials. Let's get to a better spot where we can light this up, where it's easier to work, and maybe we'll see some other materials along the way. There we go. Here's our wood. We have a platform that we can work on right here. We have our bow. Let's split some of this wood up. Then when I get to the top, you want to make sure, it just helps to have a spindle that's smaller. And I just tap down and compress the wood fibers on top. That helps it to keep from wearing down and burning up in the top. And it gets the glazing process even started. And from there, we're going to have to end up burning it in. So I have my tinder ready to go. I have my line. Shoelace, natural cordage, anything that you have. 2 overhand loops, which makes a clove hitch. All you want is just somewhat loose, not overly tight. And then the end, I just do a few more overhand loops. Just hold it in place. Then I don't have to cut the line. Wrap it around. Bearing block right here. First, let's initially burn in to see where we want to put the notch. Now for the spindle, ideally you just find something the size of your thumb or a little bit bigger. and just take the bark off and you should be good to go. It's been raining out here for the past 5 days, like I've been saying. So it's just a good idea to take off a lot of the outer side of the wood if you can, if you have the option to, if you have a good knife to do it, any knife to do it, and get down inside there and make sure it's bone dry. Got her burned in. Next step, make the notch. You can either use a saw, you can use your blade. Saw is just a little bit faster. And then clean it up with your blade. Alright, Douglas fir on Douglas fir. Got the notch cut. Got my big old board, catch the coal. Got my tinder ready, start burning her in. That's the noise you want right there. With the speed and pressure, you want approximately that noise. For the longest time I was pressing down way too hard. It shouldn't be too taxing to be drilling the bow back and forth. Then at the end we're just going to speed up to build up the heat. See if it's going. Yep. Horse's hair inside. Horse hair inside of the witch's hair. Just about there. tinder's a little damp. Take a little bit longer. Well, there it is. There's the bow drill. It was in the cold. Now it's heated up. In all actuality, it was just an experimental wood basically for me. It's my first time doing Douglas fir in a long time. It's probably been a few years since I even practiced with Douglas fir, but just goes to show you, first time, first try, as long as you use the right principles of staying nice and light on the pressure as you're pushing down. And it's a lot lighter than you think you may need to press. You shouldn't be gassed at the end of your bow drill. And then when you start to speed up and go quick, you just basically don't need to put too much more pressure down. Because if you put too much more pressure down, it's going to grind too much in and not be able to ignite that tinder, that nice fine powder that you already made. So if you just use those principles with just about any wood you have with the fingernail test, you should be okay. But until next time, in the next bow drill video or woods, we'll see you then.